Hello, welcome. Happy Friday, y'all. Mike is on the road, and so he's in and out, but very interested in seeing how I'd approach this from scratch. All right, well, that's what we're going to do today. Welcome, everyone. First of all, Metal Haze, thank you for the follow. I saw that right as I went live. Thank you very much. So this is office hours. I do this every Friday, 1 p.m. Central Time, and normally I will take questions. I will work on a project, but today I had a different idea. So generic Mike Chen in the chat is with us today, and he recently did a live code review with one of his followers, and they used you can follow. Let me drop Mike's thing in the chat here in case you're not following Mike. So they tackled this Frontend Mentor project, and well, actually, Elise, is it Elise? She built it, and Mike reviewed it and kind of provided some suggestions for changes, right? And of course, I'm watching it, and I'm just like, I don't know. He's touching CSS, and Mike's great. But I've been kicking around this idea for this talk, and so I just started writing all these notes, and I figured I'd just talk through this stuff and then try and build the same thing from a design systems perspective live on stream, which is just always a terrible idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. I don't care. So like I said, Mike, you're great. But there's there's with anything, right? There's a difference between someone who's been writing, who's been doing a thing for a year versus Brent likes it, versus 10 years versus 20 years. And it reminded me of this beatboxing video that unfortunately I can't, for some reason the audio doesn't work in my thing, but the gist of this video, one day of beatboxing and he's terrible, right? And then 1 month of beatboxing, and then 1 year of beatboxing, and he's, pretty good. And then this guy comes on who's 10 years into beatboxing, and he's like ridiculous, right? So of course, no one can hear this, but you can click on the link and check it out. Pretty short video. So not to say that I'm that last guy of CSS, but if you think of this in terms of web development, after a year, you're basically you're able to make the thing look like the picture, and it's the code might not be pretty, but it gets the job done, and it's close to the picture, right? And if you're someone like Mike who's been doing it for 10 years, you can make the thing look like the picture, but probably more accurately. And if there's something you don't know, you know where to find it, how to look it up. And then for someone like me who's been just basically almost exclusively writing CSS for over 20 years, you're thinking more of instead of how do I solve this problem, this feature, right? I'm on this blank page. This is very helpful. But typically this is something you would get in your day-to-day job, right? He's pretty good at beatboxing. Yeah, he's a very what's that guy's name from Police Academy? Michael Winslow. Anywho, it's any job you're working at as a front-end engineer, you're likely to get some, pattern like this. I can actually bring this up on, Mike, I actually bought, I subscribed to Frontend Mentor just so I could get this Figma file, and then I canceled my subscription immediately. But suffice it to say, you get something like this, and, it's your job to turn this into a thing. And generally, the way most devs approach this, they're thinking, okay, what am I going to call this? I'm going to call this a, pricing module or something, some shit. They'll come up with some name for it, but then they'll go ahead and scope all of the styles to this pricing module widget, right? This is pricing module slider, pricing module this, pricing module that, right? And that's great. It gets the job done. But then, if I'm working on another project, another feature, and I need this slider, or I need this, this list with these checkboxes, I got to restyle that whole thing. I got to declare, display flex and, font size this and line height that, right? And so like from a design systems angle, you're looking at this and you're thinking, let's say you don't even have a design system, right? You're approaching this and you're thinking, okay, let's use this feature, this first feature, to inform what our system is. And we'll write this in a way that our next feature will be able to leverage all of this stuff without being specific to that context. And this will make more sense as I go through it. But the point being, as I wrote here, unlike beatboxing, you don't need to wait 20 years to be good if you change your mindset, right? So if you change your approach from writing the system and not the feature, it kind of flips your whole perspective of like how you write CSS. And I see people who are like CSS practitioners, people like Andy Bell or Adam Argyle or folks like that, who like write a lot of CSS. Like I wrote down here, CSS boils down to applying visual styles over and over in different contexts. And so the more you can reduce how many times you're doing that over and over in these different contexts, the better off you're going to be. And also, this is how I'm able to live comfortably by being pretty mediocre at JavaScript. So, I was talking with Kevin Powell yesterday, and I was kind of talking to him about this whole kind of methodology that I have. And I'm like, Kevin is widely regarded as, a CSS expert. And I'm like, I'm waiting for somebody to just tell me, Mike, you're way off track here. You're a fucking idiot, and this would never work. But like, I've talked to Adam Argyle, I've talked to, Kevin and Steph Eccles and all these people, and nobody's at least told me to my face that I'm an idiot. But, I feel like I'm onto something here. And I think other people who do a lot of CSS are kind of going the same way, right? So the challenge of scaling CSS. I wrote this at 4 a.m, by the way, the day after getting my COVID booster. So some of this is probably not even going to make sense. But scaling CSS is a thing, right? It's very easy to end up with, your CSS for your app or your website to be, hundreds of K, right? Because you're doing that thing where every time you get a new feature, you're writing all the CSS for that feature. And so, at Proby, where I've developed this CSS framework that supports the design system, when I get a new feature, like let's say, I get something like this, I can build this with our thing without having to write any new CSS because all of this stuff already exists. I might need to build this slider thing, but aside from that, like I could build this with our design system. And and then basically I can just write all the markup and then hand that off to the devs instead of handing them a picture of a website. I can hand them the actual front end code, and they can then, componentize that, or, maybe there's existing components. And kind of the ultimate goal is to basically then be able to just look at the Figma, and it's a one-to-one of like the components that the designers are using in Figma also exist in the component library. We're not quite there yet, at Proby at least, but that's the goal. Using a framework versus making a framework, right? So I think a lot of people's inclination is like, oh, I'll just use Tailwind or Bootstrap, and that's fine. But those frameworks are like made to solve everybody's problems, right? And so you're going to have to like override styles or customize stuff. There's going to be a lot of unused stuff, so you'll have to use like purge CSS, or maybe you just leave it in there, and you've got some massive CSS library like Semantic UI or something like that that's like 400K if you don't pull any stuff out. It's very easy for your CSS to get out of hand, right? Versus making a framework, you're just making the stuff that you need to make your project, right? And the naming conventions can be specific to your app or your company. Removing friction in turning it's funny because I'm reading this like I've never thought of this stuff. Again, I wrote this at 4 a.m. Removing friction in turning a picture into a website for all devs. Okay, so yeah, so this is kind of the difference between like when you're talking in terms of moving from like junior to senior to like a staff or principal engineer, right? It's kind of like the way one of my former mentors at Groupon explained it to me as like it's like how much influence do you have on the organization, right? So as a junior engineer, the expectations of you are very low. They're like, maybe you can help out with this feature that we're working on, and then through working on those features, you're learning to be able to kind of do it on your own, right? And then as a senior, you're kind of guiding juniors, you're making, kind of larger decisions, but you're still kind of like largely affecting your team. Maybe you have some influence outside of your team, but the higher in the org you go, like you're having more and more influence on the organization, whether it's like the entire engineering department or the entire company as a whole, right? Through the relationships you build, through the work that you do. And so kind of the what I do essentially makes it so that devs don't have to write CSS, right? And so we're removing that friction of taking this thing and getting this thing and like stressing over this for you're in your iteration planning meeting and you're looking at this and you're like, oh, this is like a 9-point story or a 10-point story, or however you estimate stuff. This is like a week-long effort, right? But then you get into it and you're like, nothing's working, and you're trying to make it responsive and it's breaking and you're like, oh fuck. And so by making it easier for engineers to build a thing that looks like what the designer designed, you're reducing that friction, and that's something that can help the entire engineering organization, or at least people who are touching front end code, right? So I like to joke that my salary, I charge for my salary $10,000 for each engineer. So as the company scales, I make more money because every engineer that's not writing CSS, they're saving at least 10% of their time, right? So that's got to be worth something. But yeah, so that takes us to this front end mentor project. So how are we going to tackle this? Okay, so the first thing I'm looking at when I'm thinking, okay, I'm starting a design system from scratch, and this is what we're going to start with. I think actually we want to let's do this properly and start kind of mobile first, right? So the first thing I'm thinking of is like, what are the visual styles? I'll talk about this in a second, Sass versus custom properties. I will actually be using like a mix of the two. But when we're talking about visual styles, we're talking primarily about colors, type, spacing, layout, and icons. And in fact, Gina Ann, who is a prolific design systems advocate, she has a Cotton Bureau store here. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. This is my first time embedding things inside of Notion, and I have no idea how to like go back in this little browser. Let's see, original. Can I do that? Here we go. Original. I'm gonna drop this in the store here. In the store. I'm gonna drop this in the chat. This is one particular shirt, but you can check out her entire store here. Some good design system stuff here. Anywho's, color, type, spacing, layout, icons. So those are the visual styles that when we're writing CSS, that's largely like what we're, where's my Figma? That's largely what we're looking at, right? So we've got a bunch of colors, we've got type scale, we've got a few icons in here, some, check marks and stuff like that. And like we're picking maybe semantically what kind of elements we want to use, but those elements aren't really using. Kevin's here. Kevin says his wife's gonna kill him if he starts ordering more shirts. Yeah, my wife gives me shit about literally all of my purchases. I was just talking. I came from my one-on-one with my manager, and we we're just talking about how like that's kind of like part of the marriage pact, right? Is that your wife just gives you shit all the time. So, Kevin, I'm glad you're here. I don't know if you were here while I was talking about you, but I was saying how yesterday I was telling you, and Ed's here as well. Hello, Ed. Good to see you. I was talking about how no one has called me out on how my methodology is completely asinine yet, so I appreciate that. Um, so yeah, that's the kind of the notion of visual style versus components, right? When we're talking about visual styles, we're talking primarily about those 5 things, but also things like borders and shadows and things like that. But as I said, like CSS just boils down to applying visual styles over and over and over again in different contexts. And so if you think of visual styles in terms of Brad Frost's Atomic Design, pop this in the chat too. If you haven't read this, I mean, it's available for free online. I think he's also still selling the, he might be selling the physical copies, maybe just the ebooks. I don't know. Great book though. But if you think about his, let's see, you can just read it right here on the web. Let's see if I can find his graphic here. Anywho, you think of an atom, right? The smallest thing, like a button, has a background color and a border radius and a type size and a, etc. Those are all visual styles, right? And so you can think of those as kind of subatomic particles. And so we can, going back up here, we can take those subatomic particles and kind of tokenize them so that we're not writing them over and over, and we have this collection of values that we use throughout our project. So let's do that. Let's go into our Figma here. And I'm gonna do a little of this here. And let's see, you'll get my, so we also have, as part of this front-end mentor thing, they have the style guide where they're telling us, okay, these designs were created with these particular sizes. So here's our kind of max width and our minimum width. Here's the colors we're using. So we can start right there, right? And I'm just going to go out and say right now that whomever created this particular design was not following any sort of system, because you have stuff like, let's just go over here, for example. If I click on 100,000 page views and I measure this is 46 inches away from here. And then if I go in on this side, it's 48 inches, right? But then if I go down here, this is 48, and then this is 44, right? So like the Figma doesn't even line up. So like these are kind of the little tweaks that we want to fix using our system. And one thing I always say is like a design system will fail if the designers aren't using it. Their color naming is terrible too. We're going to fix that. Very pale blue. Dark desaturated blue. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you can build all the component libraries you want on the engineering end, but if the designers keep giving you these designs where the stuff is just willy-nilly, like has all these different font sizes and pixel dimensions because they think it looks better, and they're just like kind of nudging things over by 1 pixel, like it's not going to work. You're going to end up with all these variations of components. And so you really need to like get designers on board with this system. And what I found in building the system is, designers are going to stray from it now and then, but you just say, hey, I took like kind of what you made and interpreted it using the design system, and here's what that looks like. Are you okay with this? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh yeah, that looks fine. But not every developer is going to go in there and say like, oh, well, this is exactly, 48 pixels, and our system is, 40 pixels or something, right? So anyways, let's just get right into this, because I'm not, otherwise it's going to take me all day. So this is a little 11D starter that I use. I've got my Sass all set up here. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how, let's pull back up the Notion. I'm going to talk a little bit about, where is it? Prince is here. What's going on, buddy? So cool CSS, right? It's kind of my methodology here, but we'll skip that for a second. We'll talk about SMAX, right? So SMAX, if you don't know, is Scalable Modular Architecture for CSS, SMAX. And this was written by Jonathan Snook, quite a while ago now. So long ago that the site is not HTTPS. So click on this with caution, I guess. I don't know. But it's basically like it's a methodology that's mostly around organizing your CSS, right? And so he kind of has this idea of like having your stuff separated into folders like base, layout, module, state, theme, etc. And I think the way this has evolved over the years is that now, I keep losing my place in here. Now we kind of have a different, or at least I have a different naming convention that I use. So I start with abstracts. Oops. Let me, nope, not a new file. New folder. So we start with abstracts, right? And abstracts contain stuff like your design tokens, maybe like mix-ins, things like that, stuff that's not going to be compiled into the main, your main CSS file, right? It's being used by other stuff that's being used by other files. Next, we have base, and this is going to be like your reset, maybe you're applying some global styles, things like that. And then after that, we've got our components, and this is going to be the base of your stuff, right? Like stuff like a button, right? All of your button styles are going to be kind of encapsulated in a button. We are going to have utility styles, but we're not composing a button using utility styles. Like we have a button style. We have utilities we can apply to it to modify like the color or things like that according to our system, but largely the utilities are for like arranging stuff, using Flexbox, applying borders to things, stuff like that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then after components, you have layout, right? So a lot of these frameworks like Bootstrap, they have like this 12-column grid, right? That's another, I talked about how these things are built to work for everyone, and the 12-column grid is kind of universal because it can, be divided in so many different ways. But, typically we're only like splitting the available space in half, or we're showing as many things that will fit in the available space. We're not doing like, oh, this is a 5-column and a 7-column. Like we're not Swiss modernists making concert posters in the 60s, right? We're making websites. And so these grids that were based on kind of print media that had one fixed dimension. So it doesn't really translate as well to the web, which is responsive. And so we can just create our own grid layouts that are specific to the needs that we have, right? And these layouts can be page layouts, but those page layouts can also be used like in a modal, right? Maybe your modal has a header, a main area, and a footer. You can reuse that same layout for a page, but also for a modal, right? And so we're not writing like, modal header, modal footer, modal this and that. Something just happened. I think someone followed me. Let's see. Victory Lane. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. So layout, that's where we'll put all of those. Then we have utilities. I am famously like a Tailwind troll. Like I will just make fun of, I not even make fun of Tailwind. I'll go into, people's streams, and like if they have a word ban, I will ban the word Tailwind so that they can't say Tailwind. But if you like Tailwind and it works for you, great. It's not something that I personally would use because I prefer writing my own stuff. But if it works for you, great. And Brent has generously donated 2,000 channel points for me to not say the word that I normally don't say anyways. So well played, Brent. Well played. But we are going to make use of utilities. So that particular framework that Brent has banned me from saying, it kind of calls itself a utility-first framework, right? And I refer to my kind of methodology as a utility also framework. Like we have, regular stuff, but we also have utilities, right? Or we have utilities, but we also have component classes, right? And so this cool methodology is like components, the U is utilities, and layout, right? And that's it. And it's kind of similar to like Andy Bell's Cube CSS, which I've mentioned here. Let me I'll drop a link to that so you can check that out. Cube CSS. think it's like cube FYI is the thing here. This is really well thought out. I think it has a lot of similarities with kind of like my kind of the way that I do stuff, and his thing, the naming is different, but it's essentially the same thing. So composition is layout, what I call layout. Utility is utility. Block are components, and then exceptions are like variants, right? And so we actually handle those in utilities, or maybe sometimes even in the components, right? We might have variants in the components. So I'm now opening so many things that I don't remember what I was doing. Okay, so that's utilities. Last of all, we have a vendor, and this is completely optional. But this is like third-party styles, right? You might have something like Prism for like code highlighting, syntax highlighting, some third-party thing that you're working with. You can stash all of their stuff in here. You could pull it, separately, but you could also like plop it in here and then pull it into your style. So let's start with our abstracts. I'm gonna make a new file in here. I'm gonna call it _tokens.scss. And the reason I have an underscore is that when I add it in here, oh, look at that. Let me blow this out. This is from the starter. So I will basically, even though this is deprecated for some reason, I think they don't want to confuse this with CSS import. But in Sass, you're supposed to use @use now, which I find slightly more complex. But we want to do, let me just refer to one of my other projects. Oh, not that one. Do this one. All right. Oh, not that. Boy, I'm just all over the place today. Okay, let me see. Here we go. So that's it. Yeah. So we have our abstracts tokens. So we want to do import abstracts tokens. I think that should work, right? So now our entire CSS is going to be just these tokens. So we can go into tokens, and let me do some shifting around here. I'll close this so I can actually see the chat. Okay, great. So let's go back to our Figma here. And so we have the way I approach tokens is 3 layers. Many of you have probably heard me talk about this. But for now, we're only going to be concerned with global tokens. And this is all the values that we use in our system. What in the heck? I don't need your autocomplete help. Okay, so we're going to start with colors. We have some colors here in our style guide. Soft cyan is the full slider bar, right? Which is this, I imagine. And of course, this expresses it in hex and not HSL, which is fine. But that's the other thing. Oh no, never mind. Sorry. For some reason I saw this 80% and I thought it was the opacity. All right, so you can switch Figma to HSL. Oh great, let's do that. Oh yeah, look at that. Boom, good call, Kevin. But then it still shows this as a hex in the display. That's kind of annoying. Or is it in the settings? Anyway, I'm not going to bother with it for now. So there's probably like some of these colors are probably very similar. So let's just start plopping some colors in here. Let's do this. Yeah, and we'll close this. And we'll put this. Oops. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to call this cyan, and we'll come up with some number. And this is HSL, right? And then we've got this other cyan. I'm assuming a darker cyan. So I would say this is probably like, let's say this is I'll explain this in a second, but I like using numbers to express this. And the numbers kind of help us determine what's lighter or darker. Oh, inspect mode, I see. So we've got this strong cyan, and having this little color preview will kind of help us determine this is darker. So this is like a, I don't know, let's say 500. Hey, Aaron, what's going on? We're building a design system for this front-end mentor thing. This is probably going to take me longer than I had anticipated, but we'll see how far we can get here. Light grayish red. Okay, so we'll call this red 400. Probably should have done some more like laying the groundwork here. Oh, that's very light. So this is more like a 100. And then we have light red, which is probably not that light. Yeah, that's like an orange almost. We'll call this like red 500. So generally, like the rule I like to do is like something 600 and above is gonna be accessible on either on white or a any color ending in 100, right? And so that kind of bakes in some level of accessibility into your projects. We had some juicy semicolons here. All right, and then we've got pale blue. This is the CTA text, which is in the button here. And all right, so we'll call this like blue 400, say. And then that's pretty light, maybe 200. And then we'll say we probably have what's the call to action button then? Did I already do that? Pricing component, very pale blue, empty slider bar, toggle background, text and CTA background, I see. So this is what I'm looking for here. We'll call this blue. We'll just say 600 for now. We can play with these because it's probably more like a blue 800 actually. And then we've got white, which is just white. Which is FFFFF. And very pale blue, 40. Let's plop these in the blues here and see what this looks like. That is very light. This is like a blue 100. We'll plop this in here. And so you can kind of see we have like this kind of, progressively darker scale of colors, right? And the numbers help distinguish that because like you don't know, like, is light grayish blue? Wait, there's two light grayish blues. What the hell? And they're very close in color, it looks like. You have very pale blue, light grayish blue, another light grayish blue for the toggle background, but it's the same name, but a slightly different. Oh, that's so annoying. This is what worries me about some of these sites is that like this is ostensibly like teaching junior devs how to do stuff, but then they don't even get they don't even like adhere to any kind of system for the thing, right? Like this is probably not indicative of what you would, I would hope this isn't indicative of what you would see in like production. Like this color is so close to this color, like I don't even know. Let's call this 300. And we'll call this 200 for now. But we might look at this, palette and be like, these are pretty close. Let's just use this other color just so we can kind of narrow it down. And we've got this other one that's probably like blue 201, right? That's like almost the same color. I'm going to call it that for now, just for shits and giggles. So that is a little, let's call this 400, and we'll just plop this in here. That's 300. But essentially, we're just, kind of making a scale of values here for now. All right, and then we've got this bluish, grayish blue text. Steph says she lost track of time. No worries, you're not missing anything except for me rambling about stuff. Um, let's see, what does this look like? Ooh, that's interesting. So this is probably like might be like a 600. I'm just like kind of eyeballing these right now. But we can run all these through like a contrast checker and really kind of nail down this palette. And then we already have our dark desaturated blue. So this is our entire color palette basically. That according to the style guide here that it uses. So we've eliminated all of these. Can you imagine trying to remember which of these is which? Like, first of all, they use the same name for two different colors. But like, is this very pale blue, or is it pale blue, or is it soft cyan, or strong cyan, or like having these numbers gives you a better sense of relative lightness of a color. Like these are so close, I would probably just combine these, and same with these, depending on what the accessibility is. Because you're not going to need this many shades of blue. Like they're just so close that you just don't need that many. But as we start building this, we can try changing that stuff. So that's our tokens, right, for colors, our global tokens anyway. We'll talk about contextual tokens, which is like how these colors are used, right? So we might have all these colors, but we're not using like this dark orange for a background color, that kind of thing. It might look familiar because I was on Frontend Horse a couple times and we talked a little bit about this. But it's similar to like if you think of it in terms of font weights, right? Use kind of a similar thing, similar numbering convention. And I think there's some I think stuff like Atom's open props also uses kind of like a similar convention. So let's see, open props. Bada bing, bada boom. So let's see. I'll drop this in the chat too. Adam was actually on Frontend Horse talking about open props not too long ago, but yeah, like colors here. So yeah, he uses like single digits, which is fine, whatever. But it's a similar thing, right? Like that when you're talking about red 6 versus red 7, you know which is darker versus like, is it medium red? Is it light red, dark red, right? Yeah, so that makes that a little bit easier. So going back to this, so we've got our colors. We'll talk a little about contextual tokens when we start building out the components. Let's do some type. We'll figure out what all of our different type sizes are. They don't tell you that in the style guide, do they? Oh, they kind of do. They tell you that the font size of the introductory paragraph is 15 pixels, and they don't tell you anything else. And they tell you the font family, so that's good. So we can actually can grab this thing, and we'll go in here, and then I think in base we'll want to do like we'll make a new file, and we'll call this. I just call this global. It's just like kind of CSS, right? And then we'll pull that in here. What's the source for this? The design. This is from Frontend Mentor. Where's my web browser right here? Frontend Mentor, and it's this specific challenge. And the reason I'm doing this specific challenge is because Mike Chen on his stream reviewed one of his followers coded this, and he kind of went through it and proposed some changes to her CSS. And so I wanted to approach this from a design systems perspective, where we're writing these styles not specifically for the context of this feature, but like that we can reuse in the future. So we're slowly getting there. So let's go back to style. We want base, and this is global. And in global, we will do, I think you can just do, oops, that's not, I already lost my thing here. Style guide. We can visit here, and we can just grab the import. We don't want Montserrat, we want man rope. And we want to, let's see, we probably want, does it say in the 600 and 800? All right, so we'll grab 600 semi-bold and extra bold 800 and wait, what? 600, 800, yeah, okay. That's an interesting choice. So usually 400 is regular, 600 semi-bold. Those are typically like the defaults. So here we're actually using everything's bold and then stuff is extra bold, but you know, some fonts can be a little different. So we can use this at import and we can just grab this. This is maybe not the way I would approach it, but for the purposes of this exercise, this will give us the font, right? And then in global, we can say like body font family man rope and sans serif, right? And that'll just, you know, we probably want to do something a little more complex than that. But now, actually, while we're here, we can go into tokens. We're doing fonts. We can do font family. Man rope is a sans serif. Yeah, font family sans. And just replace this value in here with this. And grab this, right? And put this in here. And now, like, we can change that in our tokens instead of trying to find where we declared that in our styles. So if we do a rebrand and we want to change our font family, we can do that right here in our global styles. What else? Okay, font family. We've got the font family. Now let's check out some, we've got extra bold. Oh, here's another thing. We'll do font weight. Extra bold is going to be 800. And font weight semi-bold going to be 600. And so we've got, now we want to do our like font sizes, right? We want we can do pairings of font sizes and line heights. We might need to, but we want to separate out like things like color and weights. We can apply different combinations of those in our system. So this would be like let's see, font size, and we'll say this is we'll use like a similar numbering scale, right? So this is probably going to be like our font size 700 is 28 pixels. We're going to convert all this stuff to rems once we figure out what all these sizes are. We've got a 15 pixels. Actually, we'll just do this. We'll just write the values and we'll just kind of figure out what all these are. I guarantee you these are all a bunch of weird sizes, right? These are just a bunch of like arbitrary sizes. This is 40. And then this text is 16, right? So we already have 14, 15, and 16. And then this is 12. And I'm assuming this is also 12. This is 10. 10 gets to the point where it's like a little too small to read. I think 12 is generally like the minimum I would use. These are also 12, and this is 12. Okay, so this is what our design calls for, at least. And I think what I would want to do is just get rid of some of these values. So I would make this font size 800. We'd probably want stuff, yeah, right? We'll probably end up wanting something in between here. We'll say this is like font size like 300. I mean, you probably want like a 20 and a 24, but 14 at the smallest, okay. I mean, this is, you know, this is 10, so it's kind of hard to say 14, but yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. Again, it's like the goal is here to build a hierarchy, right? We can have the scale, we can scale the whole type scale up or down, but like we want there to be a hierarchy so that you don't have like fonts that are 1 pixel apart, because then there's no hierarchy, right? Like if you look at this, you can't really tell that these fonts are all within 1 pixel of each other, right? I mean, it kind of looks a little off, but I think what we want to do here is like uh, font size 200 is 14 pixels. And then font size 100 is like 12 pixels. And then, so 15, whatever we had here that's 15, we can round it up or down depending on the context. Never go smaller than 14, but also often not even going as small as 14, depending on font choice. I would prefer that as well, but like, if you're dealing with designers, like they don't want to hear that, right? They want it to look like their design. So I'm trying to find a compromise, right? And my compromise here is like, if you have a 10 pixel font, we're not going smaller than 12. And if you have a 15 pixel font, we're going to go either 16 or 14, right? Font size 1.15 rem minimum. Yeah, no, I agree. Would rem be easier? Yes, I'm going to convert these to rem. So the way you convert these to rem, 16 pixels is the default font size, is 1 rem, right? And then you're dividing 14 into 16, which gives you 0.875 rem. And then 12 into 16 gives you 0.75 rem. 28, I don't know off the top of my head. But I think we would want to use either 24 or 32, something like that. So 32 is just, we'll say 32, because that's, I think that's probably closer to the intent. So we'll say that 32, this is actually 2 rem, which means that 40, I think that's fine. That's 2.5 rem, not with a comma. All right, there we go. Boom. So yeah, pixels, no. No, we're not using pixels. I only put pixels because that was what the value was in here, and I wanted to, like, if I just go straight out with rems, like, at a glance, you're not gonna, unless you work with rems a lot, you're not gonna know that this means 14 pixels. So a lot of times in my system, I'll actually put in here in comments that this is 40 pixels, because you're gonna get designs in pixels, and you have to be able to convert it, unless they're telling you that this is font size 700. You can just use that value, right? So 2 rems, 32 pixels, 1 rem, 16 pixels. Not everyone who looks at your code is going to know what a rem is equivalent to, so it helps to have some comments in here, and you can strip these out with like post CSS or whatever. And then this is 12 pixels. Prince likes it. I'm so glad. So yeah, so we've got our font sizes, and then line height. That's a different story, right? So this should be interesting. So this apparently has line height set to auto. I didn't even know that was an option in Figma. All of these are set to auto, I'm gonna guess, because they didn't bother to come up with a line height. Oh, and this also has letter spacing on it. Oh God. See, like, this is what bothers me about these. Bootstrap is doing it also this way. With rems, you mean, or like with these token values? This is a site ostensibly built to help new devs, and the designs that they're working from are not great designs, right? Like, this isn't telling you, like, even if I inspect this, what is this going to tell me? The line height is, oh, I see. Okay. So it actually gives you, I guess the auto is based on what exactly? Okay, so where it says, correct me if I'm wrong, but Sass processing will ignore comments by default, but keep, oh, interesting. I didn't know that. I don't know if that's true or not. Actually, we can find out. Let's see, do I have my server running here? Let's see. Let's just look at our site assets style. Oh, oops, let me delete this. That's the old one. Oh, actually, this one actually translate to CSS because this is all Sass variables. So, but I don't know. Let's see, style, we're pulling in tokens. So let's see. npm start. This will start our little 11 server here. And now we've got our styles. Yeah, you're right. So you can see here that we do have our comments in here that have the slash asterisk, but not the double slashes. So that's good. Good to know. Thanks, Brent. But we could also remove these even, like in post CSS or something like that, if we wanted to. It's not really necessary. Let me close that so I don't accidentally start typing in the CSS there. So line heights. So we're going to have these separate from our well, actually, let's see. Let's do this. So we had, this is 38. We changed that to 32. No, sorry, it's 28. 28. Wait, we want 38 divided by 28. Is that right? So roughly 1.36 on that. And then we want to multiply that by 32. That's like not even a size. Let me do that again. 38 divided by 28. So we'll just say, we'll say that we want this to be 44 for the line height, roughly. And then we can do the math on that to make it what do you call it? Like we don't necessarily want to express this in pixels or rems. We want it to be a multiplier of that thing. So 44 divided by 32, 1.375. So that'll be our line height for that one. And then for 40, this is 40 and 55. Same thing. So 0.375. So it could be that we only have like, one line height for headers and one line height for like body text, right? For now. And like, notice we're not like, with font size, for example, we're not like filling in 600 and 500 and 400 because we don't need it for this particular thing. We're kind of allowing ourselves room for those things, but we might never need that. And so like we might end up making this like making this 700, making this 600, right? When we get the next feature, maybe that has some different font sizes and we can incorporate that in here, but the idea is we're not writing stuff that we don't need just to kind of, in the hopes of future-proofing it. For now, this is our scale, right? Because this is our system is based, we're letting this feature inform our system. So once we build all this stuff out, our next feature, we already have all of our font sizes. We've got our button, we've got these form controls or whatever. We might need to build some new stuff like a text input or, whatever. But we've got like this card style, right? We've got all this stuff already in our system and we don't have to rewrite that stuff for a different context. That's kind of the idea. So let's see what else we've got. This is 14. And that's 1.375. Okay. I guess we're just using 1.375 across the board. I'm just going to make that assumption, which is fine. Whatever. We might end up changing that at some point. Line height, and we'll call this like and this is where you can make whatever makes sense for you. But since we only have the one line height, really, we'll just do that. I don't feel like this is a super comfortable line height, but in this context, like there's no paragraphs. We'd probably actually make this. I mean, you could even do this like this, but then people are going to associate it with those font sizes. So I don't know. It depends. I'm going to get rid of this. We can always adjust these values too as we build new stuff. But for now, we'll just say It's line height medium. That makes things easier. So we got font size, we got line height, we got font weight, we've got our colors. Let's look at our look at this again. Colors, type, spacing. Okay, that's the next thing. Spacing. So we can kind of look at here and see like how these things are spaced. So we've got this guy here, and this is 12 pixels of spacing. All right. So here with this, I like to just call it spacing 12 is, 0.75 rems. Because like when developers are generally looking at stuff in pixel values and they just want to use this spacing value, they don't want to like do math in their head, right? So we'll just give it the numbers. Here we've got, boy, this 40 from the top, and like these are kind of janky. So 40 and 48. We'll just plug in all the values we find and see how this goes. And then here we've got, is it shift or option? 16. And it's probably also hopefully 16. Yep. Okay. Well, at least they were consistent there. This is 9 for some reason. We'll just call it 8. And then let's see here. We've got 40 again. And then here we have 32. Let's do this. 32. We'll get rid of this. Okay. And then I guess oh, there we go. That's 10. So you can see like some of these we could probably mess with these numbers a little bit. And then this is 16.05. It's super helpful. We'll call that 16. And then here we've got 12.46. So we'll just say that's 48, and we'll throw a 12 in here. In fact, I'm going to make a executive decision here that we get rid of 10 and we get rid of 40. Actually, we'll leave 40 in. That's fine. Eventually, we'd probably want to put in like a 24, maybe even a 20. But for now, like this will get us this design, right? So we've got, we'll do spacing 8 equals, this is 0.5 rem. Spacing 16, 1 rems. Spacing 32, 2 rems. Spacing 40 is 2.5 rems, and spacing 48 is 3 rems. You'd think I like was good at math in high school or something, but I went to school for journalism, so I just do this so often that I know all these values off the top of my head. All right, so I mean, this is almost entirely it. The only other thing we've got here that we might want to tokenize is like this box shadow, which I don't, what is this being applied to? Where's this shadow coming from? Here we go, drop shadow. Well, I don't know why this isn't in the, oh, here it is, it's right here. So we can grab this and we'll say that this is shadow. I like to, material design has this concept of like elevation, right? So if you think of elevation in CSS terms like z-index, right? So the higher the z-index, the higher the elevation, and the shadow like strength, right, is tied to that elevation, right? Which is kind of like how stuff works in real life. So I like to call stuff like shadow, elevation, whatever, and we have these different elevations, and each one has an equivalent z-index, right? Or at least it can, right? They don't necessarily have to. but we'll just say like this is an elevation 3 is this drop shadow, and then maybe you have an elevation 3 where the z index is 300, right? Because then you're not fighting with z index, like trying to you have like this hierarchy of layers in your stuff where like the base level is 0, and then maybe you've got a sticky header, and that z index is like 100, and then you've got maybe from that sticky header you could launch a drop down, and that's like 300, but then maybe you could have a modal on top of that, and that's 400, right? But the modal will be 500 because the overlay is 400, right? And then you have these like specific layers that you can use. So we're not going to use the index in this, but for reference, that's why I'm calling it elevation 3 and how I would associate that with z index. So what else? We've got all of that. Yeah, so the only other thing is icons. I'll address that when we work on this component because typically you would use like an SVG and like flex it with the text or something like that. I think in this one, in the case of this list, I don't know. We'll see how we want to approach that. But now, contextual tokens. Do we want to do this yet? I'm thinking yes. I'm thinking we'll do some type tokens, right? So we have our we're gonna have like and this could potentially be, well, let's just do this. We'll do let's see. I mean, this could be contextual, or so the other layer I have is component tokens, right? And this is kind of optional, but it can be really powerful. So component tokens, basically you're tokenizing every visual style of individual components so that you can really fine tune between these 3 layers. You can do stuff across the board. Like if we want to change what cyan 400 is, you can do that and it will affect it everywhere that's used. In our contextual tokens, maybe we have like color background brands, for example, is cyan 400. And so anywhere where this color is used for background color for brand, like in our call to action button, which is probably what we would use there, we'll say that this is blue 800. Let's say like it was 400 and we want to change it to 800. Now we've just updated where this color is used in this specific context, and that might touch multiple components, but not necessarily. We're not changing, we're not going to every instance of cyan 400 in our CSS and changing it to blue 800, right? And then in components, we could further say that this is like CTA button background color is color background brand, right? And now, if we wanted to change this background, this background color of our CTA to something else, like our accent color, we could do that, right? Like maybe this cyan is our accent color. We could swap that out, and it would only affect that button component and nowhere else where the background brand color is used. So that's kind of the idea of these 3 layers of tokens. We should probably start like actually coding the thing at some point, right? So yeah, I guess this is more than a 2-hour project, but we can pick this up next week as well. I'll get as far as I can today, and we'll see how it goes. So we've got our tokens, we've got our global. So let's try and start getting into some code, and we'll make the tokens as we go. So we also want to put in our reset here. So I'll make a new file here, call it reset. That's CSS, and then we'll pull that into here. Put that in. We want to put this. I want to put this above global. And so we've got a few options here, right? I'm sure you all have heard of a CSS reset. There's like the old school Eric Myers reset, which just resets everything. But then you have to like rebuild up all of your stuff, right? And then you have like Andy Bell CSS Reset. This is I think this is what a lot of people are leaning towards. Oh. So, we've got our box sizing thing here. We're removing some default margins. We're handling list styles. We're adding some stuff on the body, link styles, image stuff, right? And this is probably what I typically use. I'll put this in the chat here. Another recent one that I saw was Josh Como's. Josh. CSS Reset. And this one is similar to Andy's, I think, but it's got some other interesting stuff in here. He makes some other interesting choices. Here he's removing margin from everything, which I think is probably better because Andy's misses some stuff. Like on inputs, there's like in Safari on inputs, there's like a 2-pixel margin around text inputs. It's really bizarre. That was a bug I ran into the other day. So you have your reset, but then you have normalize, which kind of aims to make stuff look the same across browsers, and that's a little more involved. I don't know that people use that as much anymore. They're kind of being a little more selective in what they're resetting, and I think Andy and Josh's resets kind of speak to that. Because like we're just kind of trusting browsers to show stuff the way they show it, and we're trying to make things work as much as possible. But for now, instead of just like copying one of these wholesale, I'm going to show you the mic app reset, right? And this is just star box sizing, what is it, border box, and margin 0, and then font inherit. And you're like, font inherit, what the hell is that? So basically this is inheriting the font size. The font, first of all, font is shorthand. Let's look that up. Css Font Shorthand. So this includes font style, font variant, font weight, font size and line height, and font family. And so we're basically resetting all of those to inherit from the parent. And what this ends up doing is it removes all of the font sizing from headers. It removes the font weight from headers. It makes all of the text inputs have the same font family as the parent. And the same size. Like for some reason, the based, user agent styles, the default browser styles, use like a different font, sometimes a different font size for different elements. It's crazy. Legalize Apartment says, when I was first learning to code, I thought setting multiple attributes in one line with spaces was so cool. I still think it's cool. It is pretty cool. Like shorthand is powerful. It can be dangerous sometimes. I like to be explicit generally, but in this case, like this does everything I need it to do in one line, and so I'm cool with it. So that's the mic app ratio reset. When I'm just doing a quick prototype, this is what I'll do. And then if I have to do images, I'll do like max width 100%. We're not going to run into that in this instance, really, so we're not really worried about that right now. Again, when we're creating our styles, like from a design system perspective, we want to just add what we need to make this work and not try and extrapolate of like what we'll need in the future, because we don't know those things, and that might introduce, we might have to make changes to those things when we're actually applying those. So we're just putting in what we need to make this thing. We're letting this feature inform what goes in the system, and then with every successive feature that we write, we're taking the existing values that we've built, or we're adding new ones as needed, right? So maybe our next feature, we find out we need like a spacing 24, and we can have that discussion whether like, hey, can we just bump it to 16 or 32? No? Okay, we'll add a spacing 24. Same with colors. Like, hey, can we just use this color? Sure. If not, we'll add a new color, right? So then we're kind of like we're keeping the thing from getting out of hand, right? And you're always having those discussions of like, can we use what's in the system, or does this really need to be a new thing? And as I start writing out the components, you'll see, and the utilities, you'll see how we're kind of preventing writing new styles in different contexts, right? So let's see, save my tokens. And then let's see, what do we want to do here? Why don't let's just write some markup. We'll just get kind of semantically like what we want this to look like off the bat. So we'll say this is an H1 and it's simple graphic-based pricing. And then we've got a little sub thing here. Sign up for, and I know I could just go in here and copy this like a normal person. That's probably for the best, considering we're time constrained. And I probably should just do that, but I have a tendency of doing things the long and difficult way, just to make it look like this is harder than it is. I don't know. All right, now we're gonna maybe have like a this is just a div. This doesn't necessarily have to be like a semantic thing. This will probably be like a card, some kind of card, right? Let's actually, I want to look at the we decided we're going to do mobile first here. So I don't know that any of this this 100K page views, this is a result of like the slider, right? So your page view is going to go up and down. So I don't think this necessarily needs to be a header. So we'll say 100K page views. And when you see something like this where it's all caps, you don't want to do that in here because it makes it very difficult to change. We can transform this with CSS into all caps, but we want to keep this as kind of as like normal as possible. In fact, I don't even think I would capitalize page views here. I would just say it like that. Because we might come up with a different design and then we have to go in and find this wherever this lives. This probably lives in a JSON file somewhere, right? And we have to find this value and like change the text. So we'd much rather control this with CSS than have to find this text and change it in there. And then we've got our little slider component here. Is there even like an equivalent of this in HTML? We'll probably have to like, I mean, is this like a range slider? I don't even know. We'll just let's see. I don't know. I've made one of these sliders before, but I don't remember how we ended up doing it. Let's see. HTML range slider. Yeah, so it's basically this, right? So we've got input type range. So we'll pop that in there. This is going to be page views, and call this page views also. And I don't know what these. I think in the style guide, no. Some file in here. They have the values. Let's see. Drag this over here. Downloads. Design. Challenge. Aha, here we go. So I'm not actually going to do the JavaScript for all this because that's usually, I'm just trying to work on this design system. So and also I'm terrible at JavaScript, so this would take me forever. But this is just put in comments here that this is what the scale is, right? So we'll just leave this, min max here where it is. All right, so we've got that. Actually, this is probably a terrible place for it. I don't even need to know this information right now, so I'll take that out. We know where to find it if we need it. And then we have our pricing, which is probably going to be like, we don't really want, so the other reason that I use, that I reset the font to inherit is because we don't want to tie visual styles to semantic code. Alex, thank you so much for the subscription. I appreciate it. Right? Horizon looks great. I played a little Horizon last night on stream at like 11 o'clock. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Looking forward to digging back in this weekend. Like we don't want to say, hey, this is like an H1 so that I get this font size and font weight, right? We want to remove that. So that's kind of why in our reset we put font inherit. Because if I were to let's see, go to index, if I were to just kind of save this and then see where we're at here, which I think should be right here, right? Like we're using an H1 here, but we're not inheriting it, and we've removed the margin from everything. So now everything just kind of flows. So we're going to apply this using a mix of component styles and utility classes. So component styles to make to style the headings and some of the text, and then we'll apply utilities to create the margins, because you don't want to put the margins directly on the text components, because in a different context it might require different margins. And I see a lot of developers, they will start applying margins and stuff like that that's specific to this context, and then they'll have to change it later on, and it gets really frustrating to maintain all that. I'm going to close some of these windows here just so I'm not completely out of my gourd here. Great. Okay. Going back to here, so we've got, we'll just say that this is like, let's say this is a strong, and we can apply a font size to that. And this is $16 a month. And maybe this is, this might be in a span to have like a different style applied to it. Right, and then this is so this div is all the card, and then we've got a little divider here. So maybe maybe this is like in its own little section here. We'll just call it a div. Could be a section, maybe. Really up to you. If I'm just using a div to style something and it's not really semantic, then I'll just call it a div. This will probably just be a div that has like a bottom border on it, and then perhaps some, I don't know, either this will have its own padding on it or something. We'll see. But then we forgot our, we've got this monthly billing, yearly billing, and this little 25% gizmo. So this is basically an input type checkbox, and we're going to restyle it to do what we need it to do. But essentially, it's like an on-off switch, right? It's either monthly billing or yearly billing. And so, I don't know. This is a weird... This is probably not the pattern I would use for this particular decision, but, you know, whatever. You got to pick your battles when you're challenging designers. A good exercise I like to do is like if you're debating on like which approach to take. Let's say, you know, the designer's really into this and they want to use this switch. And I'm like, we could probably just make those like, you know, like tabs or something, whatever. And then you're like, you know, no, it should be a switch. No, it should be tabs. No, it should be a switch. You stop what you're doing and say, how passionately do you feel about this on a scale of 1 to 5? And if they say a 4 and you're like a 2, like we'll just do it their way, right? And that saves a whole lot of heartache. I find that a great method of conflict resolution. Like, how passionately are you about this? Because most things I'm like a 2 or a 1. Like, all right, fine, we'll do it your way, and we can just. I mean, I'll just argue just to be, playing devil's advocate or just to be an asshole. But somebody's really passionate about it. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes they don't care and they just think, I don't know. I thought that was, I saw another site do it that way. I saw Amazon do it. That's the best. That's the best answer. Well, Amazon does it that way. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, they're the arbiters of like, UI and how UI should be. Sorry if anyone here works at Amazon. I apologize, but I mean, let's be honest. Type checkbox. We'll call this. Let's call it billing. I don't know. Probably the developers would. Your dad is Jeff Bezos. Wow. You should be gifting subs to everyone then, Alex. You must be loaded. Your dad is Jeff Bezos. The other bad thing about that, Alex, is you're probably going to lose your hair. So I'm sorry. Yeah, man, Prime's going up. Friggin' Netflix just went up to $20. I just got that email today. That's a bummer. That's getting a little, you better give me more than Red Notice if you want my $20 a month, because that's not going to cut it. Sorry if you enjoyed the movie Red Notice, but Red Notice 2. I think they've already greenlit like the next like 3 of those or something. It's like Avatar. They're just going to keep making them, but I won't believe it until I see it. So we've got our little checkbox here, and then we've got probably make these labels. I wonder, can you have 2 labels? 3 beautiful people. They are very attractive people, I gotta admit. Label for billing is monthly. I don't know if you can have multiple labels though that toggle a thing. I mean, you could probably do it in JavaScript, but we're gonna put this one up here, and then we're gonna float this one. Label for billing. I don't know. I'm gonna assume that this works. It probably doesn't, but yearly billing. Right? And so the idea with labels, if you put this for, when you click on this, it will activate the associated input, regardless of where that lives on the screen. It's usually right next to it, but that way you don't just have to click on the element itself, you can also click on the label to activate it. So that gives a little bit of extra kind of affordance to the switch, a little extra usability. Billing, and then we're probably going to put this thing in a span and make it like a little what do we call those? Like a pill, right? Say minus 25%. And I think on here, hey, why is my follower alerts not working? I killed you. Thank you. I hope you didn't kill me, but welcome. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. Minus 25%, and then in the desktop version, we're getting rid of this word discount. So we actually have like a nested span. Can you do that? This feels dirty to me, guys. Friends, I should say. See, Brent, I do it too. Don't feel bad. We're all trying to unlearn what we were taught, right? Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Legalize Apartments. Appreciate it. I've never had to do an input like that with 2 labels, so it's good to know that might actually work. So I'm gonna like make some breaks here just so I can read this because it's kind of ridiculous. This should be sufficient. There we go. Okay, that's a little more legible. I lost my somehow I lost my syntax highlighting. I don't know why that is. Stack Overflow says it only works for 1 control. Okay. I know, we're trying, right? You can't change your conditioning overnight, right? I think it's as long as we're making an effort to recognize that we make these mistakes and be open to making changes, we're on the right track, right? What else? Okay. So that's our, 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 That's our top part, right? And then we've got our little bottom part here. And this is going to be, we've got a little unordered list here. Okay. And we've got unlimited websites. 100% data ownership. See, like, would it be faster if I had just copied that from Figma? I don't know. Sometimes it's just faster to type it. It's prone to errors, that's for sure, but I like to think I'm an okay typist. So we got our list, and then we got our button. And this says start my trial. Right, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. Right? Isn't that what they say over there across the pond, Aaron? Let's see. And there we go. Oh, why is this? Yikes. Oh, something's like escaping my HTML. What did I do? I made a boo-boo, y'all. That's why it's not... Oh, is it this slash? No. What am I missing, y'all? Let me close this. Maybe I can see this better. Did I forget to close something? Sometimes the apostrophes are weird. I don't see... What am I missing? Page views, min-max. Strong span P. Button. Oh, like it came back. It's this div. Input is self-closing, right? Like I don't have to do that. No. I'm assuming the yup is in reference to Bob's your uncle. It's funny because I actually do have an Uncle Bob. He is my uncle, so works out. All right, y'all. I need some eyes on this. Like, why? Why is this? Why is my HTML coming through here? Is it because? Oh, it's because this is a markdown file, idiot. You dummy. You're writing HTML in a markdown file. Hey, there we go. Let's try that. Okay, that looks more like HTML. Great. Let's see. Yearly billing. That does nothing. Oh, it has to be an ID, I think, in order for this to work. So this needs to be ID billing also. Right? Let's try that. So click, click. Although if I click on yearly again, it unchecks the thing. So that's probably a terrible idea. I guess we just want the switch to be the control, right? I wish Ben or Steph were here. Is Steph still here? Steph, are you still here? Yeah, I don't know, because we don't want it to toggle the other way if you click on it again. So maybe we'll just do a P for now. I feel like it does need a label, but oops, did I just delete that whole thing like a dummy? We'll just make it a P for now, so that I don't break anything, because I don't want to do that. And we probably won't even get to that today. I got about 20 minutes before we wrap up here. What did I just do? Why does this say filter? Okay. Wait, what? Okay, this is closing P. Boom. Okay. Let's see. Boom. Our checkbox. That we're good. Okay, so we're done. We did it. Ship it. Right? Let's commit this directly to master, or to main. Sorry. See, I did it again. I'll commit this to main, and this does, I mean, aside from this not working, and this not being hooked up to anything, this almost does everything the user needs it to do. Fills all the criteria, except for looking like the picture. All right, so now we got to build some components. So we want a layout. We probably want a layout that's just like a single column, right? And it has some padding on it at some point. So let's go into our layouts, and we're going to do a new file, and we will call this one column. And this is going to be a super basic style. So the reason I'm doing layout first is like, just, I don't know, it makes it easier. I like to kind of work from the outside in generally. So our one column layout, we want this to be, oh, here's the other thing, right? We wanna prefix all of our class names so that it doesn't conflict with any existing styles, because a lot of times, you're not going to just come into a job and start their CSS from scratch, right? There's going to be some legacy CSS, and it's going to be applying styles to elements, and you don't want to end up conflicting things. So generally, what I'll do is like this is Frontend Mentor, so I would just call this like FM, FM layout one call. And these are pretty verbose class names, but I feel like CSS is probably the least of your problems in terms of performance. So having by using this methodology, overall, we're reducing the size of our CSS because we're not writing CSS in a bunch of different contexts over and over again. So that affords us some extra characters, I would say. Right. So, so for now, I don't think our layout needs to be anything fancy. Basically just has to have like a padding on it. It should probably have, actually probably in global, we want our body, we want our HTML and body to have a min height 100%. You could do VH, but there's that issue in Safari, which I think was recently remedied with the addition of different types of viewport units. But I think min height accomplishes the same thing. So that makes this, and then we can say that our FM1 column layout, if we're applying this to the body, actually, I don't think we even need to do that. So we can just do padding, spacing. What do we got? This is 24. Do we have a spacing 24? We can make one. Spacing 24, I'm going to get an error import base layout. Cannot find style sheet to import base. Oh, sorry, not base layout. It's layout column. That's what I want. And now it's yelling at me because we don't have a spacing 24 value, which we can add. Spacing 24 is 1.5 rems. Here we go. And let's see, where am I here? Yeah, that's pretty much it. So actually, this will probably be in a container. This is 89 from the top and 64 from the bottom. Let's see. Do a little math here. 89 minus 64 is 25. That's weird. How do they even arrive at this number? All right, so let me think. Do we want this to be, do we want the padding to be all around? Probably not. I think we maybe only want the padding to be on the sides. So we can do the fancy new, what are we calling these? Help me out, chat. The instead of using padding top or padding left and right, we can just do padding inline. And that will apply 24 pixels of spacing to each side. Come on, chat. I'm counting on you to know this because my brain is escaping me here. And that's pretty much it. Let's just apply this to our thing and see how it goes. So on our body, this is actually this is our template. So I think, if we were doing this in a normal way, we would want to like pass some value here to this body, or we could just put it in its own thing. But let's apply it to the body. Logical properties. Thank you, Brent. You get a star. We'll just apply it here because we can, because we're only doing one thing here. So it would be class. I said this was FM layout one call. And let's see, we probably want to add like a max width on this. So, okay, we're getting our side padding there. Great. And what is our, on this particular one? Oh, okay, I'm going to show you a little thing that I like to do here to make these classes extensible. Or extensible, is that the word? No. Like future-proof, right? So 540, we want the max width to be 540 plus the padding. So, we can change this at some point, but probably in our tokens, we don't want to hard code this. We want a token value that's like max width. Yeah. I'm still in some cases using like non-logical properties just because to make sure that there's we do have users at Provi that are on IE and it's not insignificant. And so while we don't technically support IE, I try not to like, actively make their lives miserable if I can just do it a different way. But for the purposes of this, we'll use all the fancy new stuff that is at our disposal. So we'll say 540 pixels, right? Is the width of this, and actually no, I want that. I probably want that on the content. I don't want to apply that in here. I take that back. we'll apply this elsewhere. So let me look at this again. So okay, so let's do this heading style here. This is going to be our it's like a H2 style kind of. So we'll do components, do new file, we'll do type, and we'll add that to here. I can't spell. Components type. And we'll say this is FM heading to. And so even though this style is H2 because it's smaller than this one, this will be our H1 style. We can apply this to any HTML element, whether it's a paragraph or an H2. Like we're separating the visual styles from the semantics. And so our FM heading 2 will have, first of all of our headings, which we can do doing class star equals. This means includes FM heading will be font weight, what did we call it? It's not bold, it's something else. Font weight extra bold, right? So font weight extra bold. And so then we don't have to declare that in every heading, right? And we don't have to do like H1, H2, H3, right? We can just say if it starts with FM heading, then we can safely just give it this font weight. And then actually in our body, in our global styles, we're going to say that we want our line height to be, what did we call that? Line height medium. And so now that everything will have the proper line height. I don't agree that this is this seems a little tight, but in this context, there's no paragraphs, so you're not even really gonna notice it too much. So then we've got our font family and line height, and in type, we want our font size to be, we said this was what, 32, which is font size 600. There we go. And so we could make like we could further abstract this by calling this heading font weight and heading to font size, right? So we could change these all without touching our CSS. In fact, let's just do that just for shits and giggles here. So we can then basically, like, if you use component tokens, it makes it so that you can update all of your styles just through the tokens. You don't even have to touch any markup or CSS, ideally. But if we go in here, we have heading font weight, right? Heading font weight is font weight extra bold, and heading to font size is font size, what did we say it was? 600. And this is like the extra step that I often neglect to take when I'm starting one of these new projects. But now we can say that for font weight in our type, we can replace this with this token. And for font size, we can replace that with heading to font size. And at a glance, this seems like a needless layer of abstraction, right? But, I can, this is the heading to, right? If I want to change that font size to, bump that up, I can do that here by choosing a different global value. And it only affects heading 2. It doesn't affect anywhere else where font size 600 is used. If I wanted to change what font size 600 is globally, I can do that up here by changing 600 to 2.25 rems or something like that. And then it will affect everywhere that font size 600 is used in every different context. So here we're kind of skipping contextual tokens for fonts because there's not really different. You might introduce different contexts where type is used and you want to control it across components, but I don't know. I don't see a ton of that. So yeah, let's see. Did this do anything? Oh, so we have to apply our style here. So FM. I had too many windows open here. So now on our H1 here, we can do a class of Frontend Mentor heading 2. And there we go. Boom. Simple traffic-based pricing, right? And then we've got 12 pixels of margin here. So we need a utility for that. So we'll create a new utilities file. We will call this, make a new file. We'll call this spacing. This will handle our margins and padding. and we'll make a new thing called FM stack 12, and this just applies margin block ends, that's margin bottom, spacing 12. And then we'll add that here, spacing. This is utilities, spacing. So at a glance, it seems like this is a whole lot of extra work, right? But you can imagine like once we finish this and we have to build the next thing, I already have this helper here called FM stack 12, and I can use that in any context where I need 12 pixels of bottom margin instead of saying that it's, you know, whatever we call this page, right? Start my trial header, margin bottom equals whatever, right? So instead, I can go in here and just apply FM stack. Actually, you know what? So stack was I'm using I talked about this before. Space in design systems. This is probably the most referred to article that I look at, but Nathan Curtis has this article where he talks about spacing values, how to come up with them, like how to create a hierarchy of spacing values. Like the difference of spacing values between this and this is a lot more obvious. But I tend to kind of fall somewhere in between there. But also like what do we call these different values? So inset is padding, inline is horizontal margin, stack is vertical margin, and then squished means like it's less on the bottom, less on the top and bottom than it is on the sides, and then stretched is the opposite of that. So he calls this stack, but I think because to make it align with our logical properties, we'll call this block, FM block 12, and then that makes a little bit more sense. So now if I go in here, now we've got our margin, right? And, oh, interesting. Why is this so small? Is this... It's 16 pixels. That does look super tiny. So all of you who are talking about minimum font sizes, you are not wrong. This looks super tiny. And in here, it's this is 15. So yeah, we're bumping it up a little bit. So here, like this is going to be our default color, which is, oh, what is this? This isn't even in our color palette. We looked at this color, and this is HSLA. They didn't even put this in the doc. So yeah, take Frontend Mentor with a grain of salt here. So we'll go into our tokens and we'll add a like so I usually call this gray. If it's not strict white or black, I'll call this gray like 800, and it's this. And this actually will make this doesn't need to be HSLA because we're not using opacity. And then this can be what is the HSL equivalent of white is it doesn't really matter. 100%, 100%. I think that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like that's accurate. So gray 800. So now our body text, we want to apply that in our global styles. This is going to be, we want to add a contextual token. It's going to be color text default. And we'll say that this is gray 800. And then we can apply that in our body styles as color equals color text default. There we go. So now this is a little lighter here. But then we want this to be our kind of subdued, what I refer to as subdued. I wonder if this is in our... I wouldn't be surprised if we're missing some values here. Let's see. See if this is somewhere. 226, 2060. So that's blue 600 is going to be our text subdued. So this is going to be a contextual token. Color text subdued. And that, what did I say? Blue 600. And so now we need another utility that's color, right? For visual, I think I call it visual. We throw stuff like borders and all that in there. So this will be FM text subdued color text subdued. Right? And then we need to add that here. This is in utilities, visual. Is all this making sense? Am I just like a mad scientist here, like speaking into the ether? I don't know. Right. And then we go to our index here and we can apply class FM text subdued. There we go. Now this is subdued. Yeah, so that's our little header block here. I think we're gonna put this in a little, we'll just put in a header. Basically a header, right? Header. And then I think spacing also would include like stuff like alignment. I don't know, it could go either way. Or maybe it's in type. I don't know, spacing. Let me think. Where would this go? Well, we want to center the text. Yeah, I think that's right. So we'll make another new file. We'll just put it in visual for now. We'll say I can't spell today. FM text. Yeah, because we have text subdued. And let's do text align center. And that way we don't have to add another thing here. We can always shuffle this. And then, so we'll apply this. So we're not applying it on each individual thing. We can apply it on the parent and the others will inherit it. So class FM text center. And then we probably want to, there we go. We probably want to figure out this spacing. This does have the same, so we'll say 64. So we'll just say that's 64. Do we have a spacing 64? We should probably make one. Spacing 64 is 4 rems, right? And so here we want FM inset means padding, and we only want it to be vertical, and we want it to be 48 pixels. So this will be adding block spacing 48. And then we can apply that to our thing here. Just header inset, sorry, FM inset vertical 48. It's very verbose, but at a glance, you know exactly what this is doing, right? Any developer comes in, doesn't know anything about our framework, kind of has a clue about what's happening here. They can inspect this and be like, oh, okay, I see what that's doing. And there we go. Oh, see, this is smaller though. They're using a smaller thing. So this is now font size 20. So one thing we could do is we could use a little trick here. You find this tool. I think some of you know where this is going. Fluid type scale, right? Got our base size, our maximum size. For your type scales baseline step. We'll say that this is 375. And this is, they said 1440. It's probably actually less than that, though. But essentially, we can use clamp to set a minimum and maximum and use viewport units to determine what happens in between. So at a minimum, our thing is 20. And then at a maximum, it's 32. So let's just do. This is gonna look weird. Basically, we want that 540 and then 375. It's gonna be what did I say? 20, 32. So something like this. I don't want this whole thing. All right, well, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. This might be crazy. Let's see. So font size, we had a 20 in here, right? So we'll call this 400. This will be 1.25 rems, 20 pixels. Like so, and then I think we want to do like a contextual token, where this is like font responsive size 400. Right, and then we've got our clamp values here. We're looking for clamp value base. And we want to say that we'll just copy this. And we'll say that we're clamping between font size. What did we say? Font size 400 and 600. And let's see if this works. Maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. Then we have to change heading to font size to font responsive size 400. This naming is getting kind of wild. Not gonna lie, but this is my first time experimenting with responsive type. And that appears to have done absolutely nothing. What did I forget? Heading to... Oh, it probably broke something in the build. Yes, adding spacing 24. Undefined variable. I got it right here. What are you talking about? Spacing 24. What are you talking about? Oh, just gotta scroll down here. What? Let's try this. Oh damn, it's after 3 already. All right, well let's see how far we can get. We'll wrap this up in a minute. All right, well nothing broke, but this is not getting the style FM heading to type. Oh, I didn't change this. What did I change? Oh, I changed heading to font size in the tokens. Heading to font size, font responsive size 400. Font. Oh, font. Yeah, font responsive size 400. Clamp. Why is this not working? Let's see. Let's go in here. Style CSS, so you can see our compiled stuff here. Heading to font size 2 rems. What? No. Oh, I think do I know? I don't know. Does this need to be... How's this go? Like this? When you're doing like calculations, I think you gotta enclose these. Did that do anything? Apparently not. Where is this 2 rems coming from? It's just giving it straight up font size 600. Font responsive size 400. Heading to font size. I'm baffled here. Why is this not getting this value? Let's try... Oops. Let's try putting this directly in the type style. See if this does anything. That seems to have worked. So now you can see that this flexes between small and large. Although, let's see, they seem to have like a very specific line break in here. Oh, okay. So here's another little trick for you. Let's make a breakpoint. We'll add a breakpoint in our tokens. And we'll just say this is breakpoint medium. And we'll just give this an arbitrary number here. Well, we'll make it a little smaller for this instance. right? And then we're going to have a new utility, and it's called FM hide on small. Let's say that this is a display none. And then we've got FM hide on large. We want this to be in a media query. At media breakpoint, sorry, min width, meaning at least breakpoint m, 600 pixels. We want to apply on FM hide on large display. And then FM hide on small display revert. Is that a thing? Initial? I don't know. We'll figure it out. We're only really interested in this hide on large, I think, because we want to, in our index, we want to put a line break in here that has a class of FM hide on large. So this line break will not appear on large screens, but it will on small screens. See? Now if I expand this, whoop, what do you think about that? And so this is not specific to this context, right? I can reuse this hide on small elsewhere, but I'm just applying it to this, particular use case to show and hide this break element to have so that we don't end up with like a orphan there, right? So now this looks like this pretty much, more or less, right? little CSS trickery, right? A little responsive magic there. So I'm not using a stylant. I am not. I probably should be, but typically I'm the only one writing CSS, and so if I probably should, to be honest. I know I did a PR for Ben's Show My Chat, and he had a stylant in there, and I had to overwrite it for one thing that we were both baffled by, but it is probably something I should use. That's a good point. What's giving you the warnings hints? What are you referring to? These were Sass warnings coming from 11D in my build process. So I'm running 11D is running watch, and whenever I save a file, it's compiling the site, and if there's a Sass error, it will tell me, like, for instance, I'm missing a, I'm declaring a variable that I didn't set in my tokens. But aside from that, I'm just like doing this in my head. So yeah, that's the only error. When I'm writing, I seem to you seem to get missing. Oh, that's a I think that's in VS Code. I don't know which one that is, but let's see. We're going to debug extensions installed. I got a lot of themes in here. I wish the themes were separate from extensions. Better comments. Pair, bracket pair colorizer. Let's see. Live share, alarm ipsum. Oh, no worries, Brent. I'm kind of curious now too where that's coming from. Yeah, I don't know. I had this thing going, but I uninstalled it. I'm pretty sure though it's got to be an extension, right? There's tons of like linting extensions. Ben has his baked into his CI process or like the build step, so that's really handy. So you don't have people committing janky CSS to your repo. But yeah, so this is where we're at so far. It doesn't look like much, and if we go desktop, we haven't really done anything yet. But you can kind of see we've laid the groundwork uh, for what we're going to be doing, right? So if we look at this, we'll probably have a class that makes something, text transform uppercase, right? And then this is also, we've already created a style that makes this subdued. And so we can apply that class. We can apply one of those block classes to add bottom margin to it. We can create a card element that has, the rounded corners. We'll add a border radius to our tokens. We already have our shadow in there, so we can apply the shadow to it. Maybe that's a separate utility, or maybe it's built into the card. There could be instances where like you'd want a card to have a white background with rounded corners, but not necessarily the shadow. So we can think about that. What's a good site to learn CSS? That's a great question. I think for my money, probably the best place is it web.dev? Learn CSS right here. This was compiled by and written by some of the foremost experts in CSS, including, let's see, does it say? Andy Bell, Rachel Andrew, Una Kravitz, Adam Argyle, Emma Tversky, Camden Bickle, and Kevin Lozandier. So definitely some people who I would probably say know more about CSS than I do wrote this very handy thing that tells you all about different aspects of CSS. I think this is a great start. There's also like if you are trying to figure something out, there's csstricks.com. This thing has been indispensable to me over the years as a reference of like how to do certain things, how to pull off little hacks and stuff, but also as a reference for things like if you Google Flexbox, CSS tricks is the first thing that comes up, and I refer to this constantly. Last visit, February 14th. It's been 4 days since I looked at this page, but I'm constantly referring to this. Um, yeah, those are probably the top two that I go to, and then I also use caniuse.com to determine if I can even use a thing given the browsers that I have to support. So Flexbox is pretty widely supported. It's partial support in IE11. So if you have to support IE11, maybe you're stuck using floats. I don't know. But this is a good way to see like if what I'm doing is supported. So I don't necessarily have to test it in every single browser. You should test stuff in as many browsers as possible and in as many contexts as possible. So on your desktop, on your phone, on a tablet. Some companies have like a device lab where they have a lot of different devices that they can test on using different operating systems, different, viewport dimensions. Killian, our friend Killian from Frontend Horse has Polypane, which is an app that's like a browser that shows you different sizes all in one window, which is extremely valuable. And it has a lot of cool stuff that you can scroll, and it keeps all of those views in sync. Very cool app. So that doesn't really answer your question about CSS, but as far as testing stuff, that's a good thing. But yeah, learning CSS is I would probably go here first. And this will tell you everything you know, like the box model, right? It's pretty important that you learn this. Also, Adam and Una host the CSS podcast. You wouldn't think that a podcast would be the best way to learn about CSS, but it's actually quite good. And I highly recommend anyone check it out. But this talks about, the box model, how you can control the box model, It goes into quite a bit of detail. So I would say if you read through this and practice some of this stuff in CodePen, you'll be a CSS oh yeah, Shop Talk Show too. Good call out, Brent. Shop Talk Show is Chris Coyer and Dave Rupert. Chris is the founder of CSS Tricks, and Dave is a all around good dude. Shop Talk Show, and that they just did their 500th episode. That's not it. And this is a great show. They talk a lot about different aspects of front end development. Kind of looking ahead at what's coming up. They do a lot of great interviews with folks, and it's just kind of like a couple guys shooting the shit about front end stuff, and along with lots of great guests. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that if you're into podcasts. But yeah, so I think I'm gonna wrap it there. I think we'll pick this up again. Mike's gonna be disappointed that I didn't come up with this entire layout in 2 hours, but we'll keep plugging away at this, and hopefully you'll learn something about kind of like how I approach this from a design systems methodology, and you can apply this in your kind of day-to-day. When you get a feature like this, you can think of this in terms of like, how can I make these classes as reusable as possible and not tie them specifically to the context of this particular widget that I'm building. And if you can do that well, you'll find that like you have to write less and less CSS as long as you go. So you don't necessarily, let me just go through my my Figma here. We'll just kind of gloss over some of these. So right, I had a little notes in here about different methodologies, and really like the right methodology is the one that solves your problem. So if Tailwind works for you, if BEM works for you, if my thing works for you, great. If it solves your problem and you feel like you can wrap your head around it, then that's the right methodology for you, right? Afterwards, I need to show how I can then use the same system for another front-end mentor. I could, however, I think that different front-end mentor projects have drastically different visual styles. Oh, did I close that window already? Here, let's go back up here, and we'll open the challenge. So if I go to challenges, you'll see these designs are all drastically different. So we could adapt it. Actually, you're right. We could use the same system. We will already have a lot of the classes, and we can just we're only changing the visual styles, right? So let's see. Can I zoom in on this a little? I can't zoom in on this image, but you can see how, like, okay, for this we've already got our our fonts lined up. We can maybe tweak them in the tokens to make it match this design. We might have to come up with this like avatar thing. It's really just it's just an image where we're applying a border radius to it. So we can just have a utility called radius round, where we're making any object have a round radius, right? It doesn't have to be an avatar. It could be whatever, right? So yeah, we could absolutely, that's a great idea, Brent. We can absolutely tackle another challenge using the same system and see how much faster it makes it. So that's a great idea. Let's do that. I'm gonna actually make a note of that down here. Let's see. Light bulb. We'll give Brent some credit here. B1 Mind says tackle another front-end mentor project using the system. Yeah, I like it. We'll do it. So yeah, methodologies, whatever works for you. Open props, I dropped Adam Argyle's names. These are essentially like curated design tokens. So for this project, we're writing our own design tokens, right? We're picking our colors, we're picking our font sizes, and open props is essentially like does all that for you. But it's like, again, it's like it's made to be a good starting point for a bunch of different projects, but it's maybe not necessarily tailored to like your needs specifically. So it has its place, but if you're making it, if you're trying to build this product, open props is probably not the solution for that. Thanks, Brent. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you in the old Discord. We talked about reset versus normalize. We talked about the different resets. I didn't get into where too much, but we'll use this to kind of reduce specificity of certain things so that it makes it easier to use multiple utility classes without running into specificity issues. Again, we talked a lot about letting the features inform the system, right? So this thing is telling us everything we need to add to our system and nothing more, nothing less. Dan Mull recently had this great tweet. It says, small design systems reframing that has major impact. Let's create a design system of foundations, i.e. best practices for our org, leads to an unsuccessful team. Whereas let's collect our org's existing best practices to start our design system equals a successful team. So that's kind of in line with like letting the features inform the system. We're not just like, okay, we're going to create a design system and the design system is going to have modals and buttons and carousels and this and this and that. We're collecting the stuff that we've already done and letting that inform our system. And we're maybe taking all of that stuff and auditing it, narrowing down our choices of fonts and type sizes and putting that all in tokens and then building on top of like the good stuff that we're doing. And that helps us kind of clean up where we're struggling, right? Getting buy-in. So one of the big things about design systems is like convincing people to do a design system, right? And what I like to say is like, don't even use the phrase design system. Make this methodology part of your process and then sell the results, not the system. So the first time you build a feature and you're making the system. What? Somebody's here. The first time you're building a thing, it might take a little bit longer than if we just coded this out for this specific context, but every successive feature will be easier and easier because we will have already built this foundation of components and utilities and layouts that let us tackle lots of different things in different contexts without having to write all that CSS again. And so you can point to your manager, you can show that to your manager and say, you know, this next feature took us, you know, we saved 80% of the time it took because we already had built this system. And so that's what I mean by selling the results, not the system. You don't want to say, hey, boss, we need to carve out time on the roadmap for a design system. He's going to be like, a design system is not going to, you know, in their mind, that's not going to lead to like conversion on the website, right? Ultimately, it's going to make it so you can kind of deliver features faster, and that will convert, you know, that will lead to conversions and revenue, but it's hard for them to see the direct impact of a design system on the bottom line, particularly if it takes longer to like start up, right? A design system is not the UI kit or the component library or the documentation or even the tokens. So depending on who you ask in an organization, you ask them what the design system is, they're going to tell you something else. Like you ask a designer, they're going to say the design system's the UI kit. An engineer is going to say it's the component library. A PM is going to say it's the website with the documentation, right? And you ask the CEO, and they're going to be like, what the hell's a design system? Get out of my face. I don't have time for your bullshit, right? And so what I like to say is that a design system is a common language between design, development, and product that describes how we make websites at our organization, right? But more importantly, it's an agreement between all of our respective disciplines about how we're going to do that. It's really about the process and the relationships more than the technologies we use to implement the system. And Ethan Marcotte recently wrote this article, Designish Systems, which I'll paste in the chat. But in this article, he writes, a design system should make it easier to talk about and then execute design at a scale that's useful to you. And I feel like that is the most succinct thing about design systems. I mean, that pretty much sums up what I say about design systems in a much more eloquent way. right? It's this common language that makes it easier to talk about, and it's the tools that let us execute, and it lets us scale, because as we're adding new features, we've already have this thing that we can build off of at a scale that's useful to you, meaning like you're not taking, Bootstrap and applying it to your company, Bootstrap being useful to everyone generally. But you're making something kind of bespoke that's useful to your organization, and you're not just kind of like trying to fit some third party thing in a box to suit your needs, right? I mentioned earlier the design system can't work if designers aren't using it, right? So you can make all these components and styles and everything, but if the designers aren't giving you pictures that are using the system's values, it's just going to be, you're going to be having this constant back and forth, right? So it's really important to get the designers involved in this process. And then once you build the system, you have to support and socialize the system, right? So I work for a company called Provi, which has an app that connects alcohol retailers with distributors. And Provi's customers are not my customers. My customers are Provi's designers and engineers, right? I'm building this system that helps facilitate the process of turning something from an idea into a working app, right? And so you want to be there to support those designers and developers in using the system, in implementing the system. And then, instead of just like doing it for them, you can like pair with them to show them how it works. And then they can kind of, it becomes kind of viral. They can then show other people in the organization, hey, here's how the system works and here's how we use it. And it kind of becomes part of the process and the culture. And you can better achieve this via like having a design system Slack channel, or hosting office hours where anyone can drop in and pair on stuff, ask questions. That's essentially what this Twitch stream, the kind of the genesis of this Twitch stream was like, let me take this thing that I do at work and put this on Twitch so that people can ask me questions about CSS and design systems, etc. And then brown bags, a lot of companies have things where you can do a talk about, some project you're working on at work, or some technology that interests you. And you can use that as a vehicle to spread knowledge about the design system. And if you don't have something like that at your office, you can be the person that starts that, right? And that's another thing that we have at Provi, where we do these bi-weekly tech talks where anyone in engineering or anyone else in the company can talk about any kind of technology thing that interests them, whether it's VR or 11D, or we've had a lot of wide-ranging things at our tech talks. But so yeah, I want to put this together into like a longer form talk where I'm not actually building the thing, but maybe illustrating the thing, and maybe this will be kind of the demo of how we accomplish that. But yeah, we'll next week we'll tackle some more of this and see how much further we can get this looking like the picture. And then we'll take Brent's suggestion here, and we'll tackle another front-end mentor project and see if we can how long it takes us to do that project using the existing system. So it might require we make some new tokens. It might require we make some new component styles, some new layout styles. But largely, like, we'll have a lot of the utilities and components that we already need. We just have to apply some different visual styles to those. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, nice relaxing weekend. I know a lot of people are having inclement weather, and I hope you just, buckle down and drink some hot cocoa, or I don't know, some of you are in warmer climates, which I'm envious of. And yeah, that's oh wait, is Alex streaming? Let's say 42 minutes ago. Let me raid Alex with my 2 viewers here. All right, let's go raid Trust Codes. Raid Trust Codes. Let's see if this works. Here we go, 2 viewers. All right, y'all. It's been real. I'll see you later. Oh, raid now. Here we go.